Well, Amnesty International has warned that the parties to the ongoing conflict in northern Ethiopia must protect civilians amid intensifying hostilities in the Tigray region. For more on this, we are joined by human rights researcher at Amnesty International, Fisseha Tekle. Thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about this violence that has continued in Ethiopia's northern Tigray state. Aid agencies are in fact saying that around 1 million people face famine. This now becomes a human rights issue. Let's talk about this human rights crisis, which is now sort of interjecting the other human rights crisis, such as the killings that we've seen and certainly the displacements that we have seen in the region.
Yes, since the start of the conflict in 2020, Amnesty International has documented serious human rights violations that might amount to crimes against humanity and war crimes. And now the restart of the conflict, starting from August this year, is a concern because we are getting similar information that civilians are being targeted, and in some situations the Eritrean Defense Forces are extrajudicially executed. So the worry now is that we are the government and the allied forces might be repeating the same thing they have done when they took over Tigray in 2020 and early 2021. So we are asking the parties not to repeat the same atrocities they have committed when they controlled Tigray at the beginning of the conflict.
Yeah. The WHO has in fact blamed the conflict for causing what they call the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, the worst. Would you agree with the WHO on this one? I mean, we've seen very many crises. Would you say that this one is the worst in the world?
Comparison is difficult, but what we have seen in this conflict is that the Tigray especially has been under strict siege, while the government and its forces were not allowing humanitarian aid to flow for millions of people trapped in Tigray. Even if there was some improvement from April to August this year, after the conflict has started, that flow has been fully blocked. So even according to the UN Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, which was established in December 2021, they have concluded that starvation has been used as a means of war in the conflict in Ethiopia. So the situation is very dire, and one of the things which must be emphasized right now is that the conflict should not be an excuse to stop flow of aid, and that must resume as soon as possible, because millions are in need of medical, food, and other basic needs while the conflict is raging.
Yeah. All right. So you've touched on it briefly, and I mean, you talk about the humanitarian aid, and apart from the humanitarian aid, is in the immediate, what does Amnesty International suggest? Of course, as there are continued conversations about what's to be done in the Tigray region. What do you say from your side?
Well, the first thing is that to make sure that the atrocities which we witnessed during the control of Tigray or during the occupation of Tigray do not continue. That requires that the Ethiopian government to make sure that those who are suspected of committing human rights violations, including the Eritrean and the Amhara forces, were excluded from the battle, and they must be investigated, and they must also be brought to justice. One of the things we found out is that the amount of atrocities in the conflict in northern Ethiopia driven by ethnic hatred, reprisal attacks. Make sure that the impunity will not continue, and the commanding officers must make sure that their officers are not going to commit the same atrocities as before. Otherwise, they will be implicated in the same crimes their subordinates are committing.
All right. Thanks very much for that. That is Fisseha Tekle, who is a researcher at Amnesty International. Of course, as we're talking about the violence which has continued in Ethiopia's northern Tigray state. Let's take a